What is going on, everyone, and welcome to another video. Today we jump into Michigan football as they get kicked off, and they start their season out against East Carolina University at the Big House at home to open up the season. So we're going to run through some highlights, talk about some overall takeaways, the biggest winners and losers from this game, and kind of just look at, we're also going to kind of just run through the game, kind of talk about what happened. I wasn't able to watch the game because I used to have Peacock, but we don't pay for it anymore, so I wasn't able to watch it. But I still went through all the game highlights and kind of looked at some stuff. So I'll kind of go through some of my observations I had. Mostly good. I didn't really see a ton of bad. There's a few things maybe. But yeah, so we'll run through the game overall. We'll look at the biggest winners, losers, and then kind of look at some just overall takeaways. And then yeah. So, but to kind of get things started off here as the highlights get started, you look at the final score. 30. Oh, and by the way, if my voice sounds weird, I do have a really bad cold right now. So my nose is like super stuffed up, so my voice probably sounds a little weird. So sorry about that. But so looking at the final score, 30-3. I think that we probably could have put up a few more points. Like I was thinking at least 40-45. Look at last year's scores. I mean, Michigan was putting up 50s on pretty much every team they played. So I definitely think that we could have probably put up at least 40-ish, but don't let that deceive you because Michigan did put in most of their second, third stringers by the end of the third quarter, I noticed. So, JJ wasn't even playing. I don't think he played at all the fourth quarter. I don't think Corum played mostly. I don't even know if he really played much in the third quarter. He didn't really have a ton of carries either. I think he had like 10 or 12 carries, something like that. But yeah, and we'll talk about him as well, so don't worry. And yeah, so looking at just the rest of the game, 30-3, 27-point victory. It's not horrible. Start the season off, and I don't think it was that big of a deal, only scoring 30 because putting the second, third stringers made a big difference, and I just kind of think that even though it was only 30 points, still win by 27. You hold them to 3 points. The defense looked good. You're forcing turnovers. I think that overall, it was a good game. I think it could have been better. But, yeah, I mean, you want to look at, the bright spots, which we are going to in a second. There was a lot of bright spots, so very happy with the performance to open up the season. And hopefully we can continue this momentum going throughout the season. So, yeah. So let's jump into our biggest winners for Game 1 for Michigan. Looking at our first winner, obviously J.J. McCarthy going, I think it was 25 of 30 for 3 touchdowns, all 3 going to Roman Wilson. He looked good. This right here shouldn't have been a touchdown. Even the announcers were saying it definitely should not. It should not have been a touchdown, but more than likely we probably would have scored a touchdown there anyway. So it really wasn't the end of the world, but J.J. McCarthy looked really good. He, only 5 incompletions. What would that percentage be? It would be like a 82% completion percentage, I think it is, 25 of 30, which is ridiculous. Now, I don't want people to start overreacting to it and saying, oh my gosh, this is like Heisman level. Like, we're playing East Carolina. It's not, it's not the top competition. We don't need to overreact. 25 of 30 is nothing to sit there and be like, oh, that's not that good. 25 of 30 is really good, and that was what we were hoping to see from JJ. We saw from him last year to start off the season as well. So to see him come out and do it again to start the year this year definitely probably gave us a little bit of just kind of relaxed us a little bit. You kind of knowing, okay, JJ still got it. He's didn't throw any interceptions, only 5 incompletions, 3 touchdowns. I mean, he looked good. So for sure, I think he was probably the biggest winner. And going out and seeing him still being able to sling the ball and not have really any. He didn't have really any bad pass. There was a few that were low and I think throwing a little behind that most of the receivers were able to catch, but again, 25 of 30, that's pretty dang accurate. And you got to remember that Michigan is not a school known for wide receivers. We never have been known for that. Ronnie Bell was our best receiver, the last few years, other than when he was hurt, obviously. But, now that he's gone, he's really up to Cornelius Johnson, who we'll talk about him more later as well. Because, expectations are super high for him this year. Roman Wilson, obviously, we're going to talk about him here in a second. He was awesome, but other than that, I mean, there's not a ton of. Michigan's more of a pound the ball up the middle, run the ball, give it to Blake Corum, let him run behind the big guys, run it to the outside, give it to Donovan Edwards, or throw a little screen pass to him. So that's really what Michigan likes to run. Passing wise, I think this year is going to have to change a little bit. Michigan's going to have to adapt more to passing, but at the same time, you really don't need to until those bigger games like Penn State, Ohio State. It's what they did last year. Michigan didn't really have any big games through the air until that Ohio State game, and then J.J. McCarthy threw for like 300 yards and like 3 touchdowns. So looking at J.J. McCarthy, I was super impressed with him. I think he looked great. Let's move on to our second biggest winner, which was none other than Roman Wilson, who had 6 catches. I forget the yardage off the top of my head. I think it was probably 90-ish. I'll have to double check that, but he also had 3 touchdowns. So I just checked, it was 78 yards, so that's pretty dang good off 6 catches. Very impressive performance from him, and he is emerging as Michigan's #1 receiver. And he did last year as well. I honestly think that, as I think Ronnie kind of got going as the year went on, but Roman Wilson's been the best. Like, he has been that guy, and I think Michigan's very fortunate to have him back this year because more than likely he's probably, I'm guessing, I don't know if this is last year of eligibility or what, but more than likely he's going to be gone after this year. So, very happy with how he played, though. I thought that he was tremendous. 3 touchdowns, and he had a few really nice catches. Really hope he can continue that performances like that, going into the future, and continue to help carry Michigan's receiving game. And he looked good. Moving on to number 3, Blake Corum, who, it was hard to put him as the biggest winner because honestly there wasn't really a ton of like standout players, breakout players. There wasn't any breakout players that I was like, oh my gosh, look at this guy. There wasn't any big breakout stars that emerged. And Corum really didn't have a huge game. He had a decent receiving game, and then he also had 10 carries for 78 yards and 1 touchdown. He had a couple big runs in the beginning, and after that kind of slowed down. Only 10 carries, what are you going to do? So, it was hard to say that he was the biggest winner, but with those big carries in the beginning, it was easy to see that, he's still one of the best running backs, if not the best running back in the country this year. So, yeah, I think for sure looking at him, he was, he had a good game. Just he didn't get enough carries to really sit here and be like, oh, yeah, Blake Corum, Blake Corum for Heisman. He didn't have enough carries to really, look at him like that. So it's unfair to really say that he had a bad game when he didn't really get enough opportunities. So the way I look at it is, he had those huge runs, and he had that touchdown, and he looked good, just like JJ did. So still, I think that he probably had one of the better games out of anyone. So yeah, he looked great. I was very happy with Blake Corum. Let's move into the biggest losers. Starting with number 1, I had to go with Donovan Edwards. I don't think that he had a horrible game, honestly, but he was really struggling to run the ball. And this is not all his fault. We're going to get into this here on the next biggest loser. But he just, was his first, 7 carries, went for 5 yards or something like that. He was averaging, 0.7 yards per carry. He did have a couple good catches for, big plays. But other than that, he just kind of seemed like he kind of struggled to get anything going. He had a couple bigger runs towards the third quarter that kind of got him, I think he ended up averaging 3 yards carry. So he had a couple good runs that kind of, got him some momentum going and got him, and got his stats going back up. So overall, he had a good game. I thought it could have been a lot better. I thought the run game just really didn't look all that great. And we're going to talk about that more in a second, like I said. And so let's move into the next biggest loser, which was the offensive line. The offensive line, Michigan is known for having probably the best offensive line in college. I forget if they won the award last year, but I know they did the year before. They've always just been known for being offensive lineman university, And, I think a couple of guys left this year, but at the same time, we just seemed like we couldn't run the ball like what we used to. And against the East Carolina team, it should have been better. It was good in the first half, or the first, few drives, I should say. But then the offensive line didn't look great. It's not like JJ, was under pressure all the time and stuff. It just, for the run game, I feel like the offensive line could have been better. So it's hard to, sit here and say the offensive line was horrible. They didn't look as good. I just think they could have looked better. I think that the offensive line needs to improve a little bit more, because if this is how you're going to look against East Carolina, then you're going to probably against teams like Ohio State, Penn State, the teams that are going to have really good pass rushers that are going to, create sacks and plays defensively. You're going to have a good offensive line. You're going to have a good run game, as Michigan always has. So hopefully they can clean that up. And number 3 for the biggest loser, Cornelius Johnson, who, even going into last year, he was expected to be Michigan's, number 1 or 2 receiver, be a guy that could be a top 10 receiver in the country, probably go to the NFL draft and get drafted somewhere. I saw mock drafts last year of him going first round, towards the beginning of the year. And then he kind of had a disappointing year. It's not like he had a horrible year. He didn't really get injured, I don't think, at all. So the fact that he didn't really improve much last year was a little bit, okay, you need to show something. Going into this year, he's, I think most people are looking at him, either him or Roman Wilson, as wide receiver 1. I would look at Cornelius as wide receiver 1, and he only had a couple catches for, a few yards today, and I think that he's got to be better. I think that he's got to emerge as the number 1 receiver on this team, and he has to prove that he is Michigan's best receiver. So yeah, overall takeaways, Michigan looked good. I thought that it was fine. A 27-point victory over East Carolina. East Carolina is not like a horrible team. They're more of I would compare them to like a Western or Central Michigan, honestly. So I would put them right up there. Got to see some backups play, which was nice, and just a good way to start the season. Nothing really bad to take away. There wasn't a lot of mistakes. There was that one 4th and goal, I think it was, where Michigan fumbled. But other than that, this was a good game, and I think Michigan looks good. I do think they look like a top 2 to 3 team in the country, and I think they got a legit chance. I really do think that they could win the Natty this year. I think that between them and Georgia, maybe a couple other teams, I think it's between them. And so yeah. But yeah, guys, thank you so much for watching. I appreciate everything and every single one of you, and I will see you in the next video.